The marketplace smelled like 1,000 different worlds had been crammed into one small space. Curran walked through the crowds with his hunting pack trailing behind him. 5 Dravek warriors moving together always caused other species to step aside quickly. That was how things worked in the galaxy. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak moved out of the way. His black scales caught the artificial lighting as he scanned the vendors. 3,000 years of galactic dominance had taught the Dravek one simple truth. Nobody challenged them and lived to talk about it. Standing 9 feet tall with 4 arms ending in claws that could tear through steel plating, they were evolution's perfect killing machines. A commotion near the docking ring caught his attention. Something unusual was happening. Curran gestured to his pack and they moved through the crowd like sharks through water. Other aliens practically threw themselves out of the path. A new ship had docked. The design was strange, all smooth curves and odd angles that Curran had never seen before. 3 small aliens were unloading cargo containers onto hover pallets. They stood maybe 6 feet tall, with only 2 arms and no visible natural weapons. Soft skin instead of scales or chitin. They looked pathetically vulnerable. "What are those?" one of his pack asked. "Humans," another Dravek answered. "New species. Just started exploring this sector about 6 months ago." Curran studied them carefully. The humans wore simple work clothes and moved their cargo with practiced efficiency. One was female with dark hair pulled back in a functional style. Another was male with Asian features and grease stains on his hands. The third was also female, smaller than the others, wearing what looked like medical insignia. "Their ship has Earth artifacts," someone in his pack mentioned, "worth a fortune on the black market." Curran smiled, showing rows of razor teeth. "Then we should introduce ourselves." They approached the humans with the confident swagger of apex predators who had never known defeat. The marketplace grew quiet as other species noticed what was happening. Some vendors began packing up their goods quickly. Everyone knew what came next. The dark-haired human woman looked up from her datapad as the Dravek surrounded them. She studied Curran for a moment, then glanced at her companions. Neither of them showed fear. That was interesting. "Can we help you?" she asked in perfectly accented galactic common. "Your cargo," Curran said simply. "We are claiming it as salvage rights." The woman tilted her head slightly. "Salvage rights only apply to abandoned vessels. Our ship is clearly operational and crewed." One of his pack laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Who is going to stop us? You." The Asian male set down the container he had been moving. "Look, we do not want trouble. We are just trying to conduct legal trade. If you walk away now, nobody has to get hurt." Curran moved closer, looming over the human. "Are you threatening me, little mammal?" "No," the dark-haired woman said calmly. "David is trying to give you good advice. You really do not want to do this." The sheer audacity of these weak creatures making threats against Dravek warriors was almost amusing. Curran reached out with one of his upper arms to shove the woman aside. Time to teach these newcomers their place in the galactic hierarchy. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. The woman moved, not fast by Dravek standards, but with absolute precision. She redirected his arm using his own momentum, stepped inside his reach, and somehow Curran found himself flying through the air. He crashed into 2 of his pack members, and they all went down in a tangle of limbs and scales. The other humans moved simultaneously. David caught another Dravek warrior in some kind of lock that had all 4 arms trapped and useless. The smaller female swept the legs out from under the 5th Dravek with a move so smooth it looked choreographed. Curran tried to get up and found a human knee on his chest and his primary arms pinned. The woman looked down at him with calm brown eyes. "We asked nicely," she said. The entire marketplace had gone silent. Dozens of species from across the galaxy stared in disbelief at 3 humans restraining 5 Dravek warriors. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The woman applied pressure to Curran's wrist until his claws retracted. "My name is Rebecca. This is David and Amy. We came here to trade, not fight, but we will not be victims. Do you understand?" Curran's pride screamed at him to keep fighting, but his tactical mind was analyzing what had just happened. These humans had not used weapons. They had not even hurt him beyond some bruising to his dignity. They had simply neutralized the threat with minimum force and maximum efficiency. "I understand," he managed to say. Rebecca released him and stood up. She offered him a hand to help him rise. The gesture was so unexpected that Curran took it without thinking. Her grip was firm, and she pulled him to his feet with surprising strength for her size. "We good?" she asked. David and Amy had released the other Dravik warriors. All 5 of them stood there surrounded by watching aliens, completely unhurt but thoroughly defeated. It had taken less than 30 seconds. Curran looked at his claws, then at Rebecca's soft hands. How had she done that? Dravik fought with strength and speed, but these humans had fought with something else entirely. Technique, leverage, coordination. "We are good," he said slowly. Rebecca nodded and turned back to her cargo like nothing had happened. The crowd began to move again, conversations starting up in hushed tones. Curran and his pack walked away from the human ship, each warrior lost in their own thoughts about what had just occurred. As they left the marketplace, Curran could not stop thinking about those calm brown eyes. Rebecca had not been afraid, not even a little bit. She had been confident, like she had known exactly what would happen if he attacked. Somewhere in the galaxy, he realized, someone was going to try to kill these humans, and those attackers were going to be very surprised at what they found. The news would spread quickly. It always did when something interesting happened at a major trading station. Within hours, every species in this sector would know that 3 humans had defeated 5 Dravik warriors without breaking a sweat. Curran touched his bruised chest and smiled despite himself. Maybe the galaxy was about to become much more interesting. The War Council chamber on Draknar had not been used for an emergency session in over 200 years. 12 of the most powerful Dravik in the galaxy sat around a circular table made from the bones of extinct megafauna. Their combined presence could make entire star systems negotiate peace treaties just to avoid their attention. Varshak slammed one fist on the table. The impact cracked the ancient bone surface. "Explain to me how 5 of our warriors were humiliated by 3 unarmed mammals." The hologram replay showed the marketplace incident from 6 different angles. Every council member had watched it at least 10 times. Each viewing made the situation worse. The humans moved like they were dancing, not fighting. They used the Dravik's own strength against them. It was methodical, clinical, efficient. "They are trained," one council member said. "All 3 show signs of advanced combat instruction." "Obviously they are trained," Varshak growled. "The question is how. What kind of world produces creatures that can fight like this despite having no natural weapons?" An intelligence officer activated another hologram. "We have been gathering data on Earth for the past 6 months since humans began exploring beyond their star system. The information is disturbing." The hologram showed a blue and green world, beautiful from orbit. Then the view zoomed down to surface level. Ice caps that could freeze solid in months, deserts that could cook flesh in hours, jungles filled with venomous creatures, oceans hiding apex predators with thousands of teeth. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world," the officer continued. "Only 3 other known inhabited worlds score that high on the danger scale. Everything on Earth evolved to kill everything else. The humans survived this environment for millions of years." Varshak studied the images. They had to become dangerous just to live. Worse, they had to become intelligent. Humans have almost no natural defenses. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. They are persistent hunters who evolved to outlast stronger prey. They developed tools because they needed them to survive against animals that could tear them apart. Another council member leaned forward. Show them the warfare data. The hologram changed to show human history, thousands of years of organized conflict. Weapons that evolved from sharpened sticks to devices that could split atoms. Tactical doctrines refined through endless generations of fighting each other. Humans have never known a time without war, the intelligence officer said. Every culture on their planet developed fighting systems. They call them martial arts. Hundreds of different styles, all designed to help weaker fighters defeat stronger opponents. The council sat in silence. Dravak warfare was simple. Use superior strength and speed to overwhelm the enemy. They had conquered 73 worlds using that basic approach, but humans came from a world where that would get you killed. They are not just fighters, Varshak said slowly. They are survivors who learned to fight anything. There is more. The hologram showed footage of human soldiers working together in combat. They coordinate in ways we have never developed. Humans are pack hunters by nature. They think as groups, not individuals. Watch how they cover each other, how they communicate without words. The marketplace fight played again. This time Varshak saw it differently. Rebecca had not just fought Curran. She had positioned herself to protect David and Amy while engaging. David had neutralized the threat closest to Rebecca. Amy had prevented flanking. 3 individuals fighting as one organism. This changes everything, a council member said. If humans can train small teams to defeat our warriors, what happens when we face their military forces? Varshak stood and walked to the viewport. Drakner stretched out below him, a world that had never been conquered. His species had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Now some upstart primates from a death world had proven that fear was not enough. We need to test them properly, he said. One fight in a marketplace proves nothing. We need to know their true capabilities. You want to challenge them officially? Another council member asked. Yes, a formal combat trial. Our finest warriors against their best fighters. No weapons, no technology, pure skill. If they win, we acknowledge them as equals. If we win, they submit to our authority in this sector. The council murmured among themselves. It was a risky proposition. If the Dravak lost publicly, their reputation would be damaged across the entire galaxy. But if they refused to challenge humans after this humiliation, they would look weak anyway. How many fighters? The intelligence officer asked. 10 against 10. Make it a proper test. Varshak turned back to the council and broadcasted across the galactic network. Let every species watch. Either we prove that humans got lucky or we learn to respect them. A junior officer entered the chamber and bowed. Supreme Leader, the human ambassador has arrived at the orbital station. He requests an audience with the council. Varshak smiled, showing teeth that could bite through armor plating. Send him in. Let us meet these remarkable humans face to face. Ambassador Richard Foster entered the War Council chamber 15 minutes later. He was older, maybe 60 in human years, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He walked without fear into a room full of beings that could kill him with casual ease. Supreme Leader Varshak, Richard said, using proper Dravak formal address. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Ambassador Foster, your species has made quite an impression. So I have heard. I came to apologize for the incident at the trading station. My people were defending themselves, but I understand it may have caused offense. Varshak studied the human carefully. No fear, no deception, just straightforward honesty. Your people have nothing to apologize for. We attacked them. They responded appropriately. He paused. Which brings me to a proposal. He explained the challenge. 10 Dravak warriors against 10 humans, broadcast to the galaxy. Richard listened without interrupting. I need to consult with my government, Richard said when Varshak finished. but I suspect they will accept. Humans do not back down from bullies. We are not bullies, Ambassador. We are warriors testing other warriors. Richard smiled slightly. On Earth, we have a saying, walk softly and carry a big stick. We prefer peace, but we are very good at war when necessary. Then we will see just how good you are. Richard extended his hand in the human custom. Varshak gripped it carefully, aware his claws could puncture the soft flesh. The human's grip was firm and steady. As Richard left the chamber, Varshak felt something he had not experienced in 2 centuries. Uncertainty. These humans were not like other species. They did not fear the Dravak. They respected strength but refused to be intimidated. Begin selecting our 10 finest warriors, he ordered the council. And somebody find Curran. He faced these humans before. I want his assessment. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented, and Varshak had a feeling the outcome would surprise everyone. Sanctuary Prime earned its name by being neutral territory where even blood enemies could meet without violence. The planet had hosted peace negotiations, trade summits, and cultural exchanges for over 1,000 years. Now it would host the most watched combat trial in galactic history. Rebecca stood in the training facility looking at her 9 teammates. 2 weeks ago, most of them had been strangers. Now they would fight together against the galaxy's most feared warriors while billions watched. All right, people, gather up, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had led soldiers through worse situations. We have got 72 hours before the first match. Let's go over what we know. Carlos stepped forward. He was a former Marine who had seen action in 3 different Earth conflicts. Scars marked his arms and a permanent intensity filled his eyes. The Dravak have significant advantages. Stronger, faster, 4 arms versus our 2 natural weapons we lack. If we try to match them strength for strength, we lose. So we do not match them, Anna said. She was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt who had spent 15 years teaching people how to fight smarter. We use leverage, technique, and the fact that bodies are bodies. It does not matter if you have 4 arms or 40. Joints only bend certain ways. Victor nodded agreement. The massive Russian had won Olympic medals in wrestling and could put people on the ground faster than most could blink. I have been studying their movement patterns from available footage. They rely heavily on upper body strength. Their lower body balance is actually vulnerable. David pulled up holographic displays showing Dravak anatomy. I ran biomechanical analyses. Their 4-arm configuration creates interesting weaknesses. When they commit multiple arms to an attack, they lose defensive coverage. And their spine structure means certain throws will work even better on them than on humans. Amy studied the data with clinical precision. As the team medic, she understood bodies better than anyone. Their healing factor is impressive but not instant. Chokes still work. Joint locks still work. Pain compliance still works. They bleed oxygen just like we do. Rebecca listened to each assessment. Her team came from different backgrounds, but they all understood the fundamental truth of combat. It was not about being the biggest or strongest. It was about being smarter and more adaptable. The Dravak have been the dominant military force for 3,000 years, she said. They got complacent. They stopped evolving their tactics because nobody could challenge them. But we come from Earth, where everything wanted us dead. We had to innovate just to survive. She activated another display showing Earth's history. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other. We developed hundreds of martial arts: wrestling, boxing, jiu-jitsu, judo, Muay Thai, sambo, and dozens more. Every culture found ways to let smaller people defeat larger opponents. That is our advantage. The team spent the next hour drilling combinations. Carlos and Victor practiced throws that would work on the Dravak's unique physiology. Anna and Amy worked on joint manipulations that would control 4 arms instead of 2. David and another team member named Lisa ran through ground fighting scenarios. Between drills, they talked. Rebecca had learned in the military that teams who knew each other fought better together. "Why did you volunteer for this?" she asked Victor during a water break. The big Russian smiled. "Back in Moscow, I trained kids from rough neighborhoods, taught them that size does not matter if you know what you are doing. Seems appropriate to teach the galaxy the same lesson." Carlos had different motivations. "I fought in wars where we were outgunned and outnumbered. We won because we were better trained and more committed. The Dravek think they cannot lose. That kind of arrogance gets people killed." Anna's reason was simpler. "I have spent my whole life proving that technique beats strength. This is just a bigger stage." They trained for 12 hours straight. Then they ate together, sharing stories about Earth. David talked about growing up in Lowe's Angels. Lisa described learning to fight in London's underground boxing scene. Amy mentioned her medical training in emergency rooms where violence was common. "We are all fighters," Rebecca said as they finished eating. "Not because we wanted to be, but because our world made us that way. Earth does not produce warriors because we love war. We produce warriors because we had to learn to fight or die." The next day, Ambassador Richard visited the training facility. He watched them drill for an hour before speaking. "The whole galaxy is watching this," he said quietly. "Trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. How you perform will shape how they see humanity for generations." "No pressure, though," Carlos said with dark humor. Richard smiled. "You are representing Earth, yes, but you are also representing every species that has ever been bullied by the Dravak, every world that submitted because they thought they had no choice. Show them there is always a choice." Rebecca met his eyes. "We will show them that humans do not give up, we do not surrender, and we definitely do not lose to bullies who think strength is everything." That night, Curran visited the human facility. The Dravak warrior who had fought Rebecca wanted to see them train. Security allowed it after Rebecca agreed to the meeting. "You move differently than any species I have encountered," Curran said, watching Carlos demonstrate a throw. "You use your opponent's momentum against them." "That is the point," Rebecca said. "We learned to fight things stronger than us. Bears, big cats, each other. We had to be smart about it." Curran gestured with two of his arms. "The Dravak way is direct, overwhelming force applied decisively. And that works great until you meet someone who trains specifically to counter overwhelming force." Rebecca demonstrated a simple wrist lock. "May I?" Curran offered one arm cautiously. Rebecca applied the lock, showing how the joint mechanics worked the same regardless of how strong the arm was. "Strength does not matter if I control the joint. The bone only bends one direction." "Fascinating," Curran said thoughtfully. "We never developed such techniques because we never needed them." "That is your weakness," Rebecca released his arm. "You stopped adapting, we never could." As Curran left, he turned back. "I will be fighting in the trials. I want to face you again, Rebecca of Earth, properly this time." "Looking forward to it," she said. The final day before the matches, the team ran through full contact sparring. They moved like they had trained together for years instead of weeks. Amy swept Carlos into an arm bar. Victor threw David with casual precision. Lisa and Anna rolled across the mat in a technical ground fighting exchange. Rebecca watched them and felt confident. They were ready, not because they were the strongest or fastest, but because they were humans from Earth and humans knew how to win. The arena had been built specifically for this event in just 2 weeks. 50,000 seats surrounded a circular fighting area large enough for proper combat, but small enough that spectators could see everything. Above the physical crowd, billions more watched through galactic broadcasts on thousands of worlds. Rebecca stood with her team in the preparation area. Through the walls they could hear the crowd, a sound like ocean waves made of voices speaking hundreds of different languages. History was about to be made, one way or another. First match is Carlos versus Draxol, David said, checking the schedule on his datapad. They are sending their legend right out of the gate. Carlos cracked his knuckles and rolled his shoulders. Good, let's make a statement early. Draxol was a Dravak who had never lost a fight in 200 years of combat. He had defeated champions from 17 different species. His black scales were marked with scars from battles that would have killed lesser warriors. When he entered the arena, the Dravak section of the crowd roared approval. Then Carlos walked out from the opposite entrance. He looked tiny compared to Draxol. Human, average height, maybe 180 pounds of muscle and determination. The crowd grew quiet, wondering if this would be a quick execution. The referee, a neutral Kelton with 6 legs and compound eyes, explained the rules. Victory by submission, knockout, or surrender. No weapons, no technology. Medical teams stood ready. The fighters would begin when the chime sounded. Carlos stood relaxed, hands at his sides, weight balanced evenly. Draxol dropped into a Dravak combat stance, all 4 arms extended, claws gleaming. The chime rang. Draxol charged with blinding speed. 4 arms reached to grab, crush, and tear. Most opponents froze when facing that kind of overwhelming assault. Carlos moved forward. He slipped inside the reach of Draxol's upper arms and grabbed the Dravak's lower right wrist. In one smooth motion, he dropped his hips, turned, and executed a textbook hip throw. Draxol went airborne, 250 pounds of apex predator suddenly weightless, and crashed onto the arena floor hard enough to crack the reinforced surface. The crowd gasped. Draxol had been on the ground for perhaps half a second in the last century. Now he was on his back looking shocked. Carlos did not give him time to recover. He moved into a mount position, controlling Draxol's upper body while his legs trapped the lower arms. Draxol tried to buck him off using pure strength. Carlos adjusted his weight and position with practiced ease, staying centered no matter how hard the Dravak thrashed. "You are strong," Carlos said calmly, "but strength without technique is just wasted energy." He transitioned smoothly from mount to Draxol's back, one arm sliding around the thick neck in a rear naked choke. Draxol had 4 arms, but none of them could reach the human on his back. He tried to stand up. Carlos squeezed, cutting off blood flow to the brain. Draxol's vision began to darken. 200 years of victory ended in under 2 minutes by a human half his size. He tapped the mat 3 times. Submission. The arena exploded in noise. Half the crowd cheered, half sat in stunned silence. Carlos released the choke immediately and helped Draxol sit up, making sure he was okay. The Dravak looked at him with something like respect. "How?" Draxol asked. "Training," Carlos said simply, "and fighting people stronger than me my whole life." The next match was Anna versus a female Dravak named Kresh. Kresh was faster than Draxol, using her speed to keep distance and strike from range. But Anna had spent 15 years teaching people exactly how to deal with fighters who used reach advantages. She pressured forward constantly, slipping punches and closing distance. When Kresh threw a combination with her upper arms, Anna ducked under and shot for a takedown. She got inside the longer reach, grabbed a leg and drove forward. Kresh went down. On the ground, Anna moved like water flowing from position to position. She isolated one of Kresh's arms, hyperextended the elbow and applied pressure. Kresh tried to muscle out of it. Anna adjusted her angle and applied more pressure. The biomechanics were simple. The joint only bent one way and Anna was bending it the other direction. Kresh tapped, another human victory. Victor faced a Dravak named Torn who weighed at least 300 pounds. The wrestling match was technical and brutal. Torn used his strength to resist Victor's throws. Victor used footwork and angles, never meeting force with force. He swept Torn's legs, established control, and ground the bigger fighter down through superior positioning. After 6 minutes of constant pressure, Torn was exhausted. Victor transitioned to a pin, controlling all four arms with his body position. Torn could not move, could not breathe properly, could not escape. He submitted. 3 matches, 3 human victories. The Dravek section of the crowd had gone quiet. Rebecca watched from the preparation area and allowed herself a small smile. The team was executing perfectly, but she knew the Dravek would adapt. They were warriors after all. They would learn from these losses. The 4th match proved her right. The Dravek fighter named Sark had watched the previous matches carefully. When he faced David, Sark did not charge in recklessly. He circled carefully, respected David's technical skill, and picked his moments. David was good, but Sark was learning. The Dravek used his reach more intelligently, kept his base wider for better balance, and protected his joints. When David shot for a takedown, Sark sprawled and used his superior strength to stuff it. The fight was closer, more competitive. Sark managed to land several solid strikes that left David bleeding from a cut above his eye, but David's cardio was better. He kept pressure, kept moving, kept forcing Sark to work. In the 3rd minute, Sark made a small mistake. He overcommitted to a punch. David trapped the arm, took the back, and sunk in a choke. Sark fought it for 10 seconds before tapping. 4 matches, 4 human victories, but the last one had been competitive. The Dravek were adapting. The 5th match was Rebecca versus Curran. They had fought once before in the marketplace. Now they would finish what started there. Curran entered the arena to supportive roars from the Dravek crowd. He had trained with human techniques over the past 2 weeks, learning from that first humiliating defeat. He would not make the same mistakes. Rebecca walked out to thunderous applause from species that had never cheered for humans before. She represented something new in the galaxy, proof that intelligence could overcome raw power. They faced each other across the fighting circle. Curran bowed in the Dravek tradition. Rebecca bowed back, showing respect. The chime rang and they began. Curran had learned from their first encounter. He did not charge recklessly or rely on brute force. Instead, he circled carefully, watching Rebecca's footwork, studying her balance. 2 weeks of analyzing human combat techniques had taught him valuable lessons. Rebecca mirrored his movement, patient and controlled. She could see the improvement in his stance. This would not be a 30-second victory like the marketplace. Good. She wanted to show the galaxy what happened when both sides fought intelligently. Curran feinted with his upper arms and shot low with his lower arms, attempting a wrestling-style takedown. Rebecca sprawled, but Curran had expected that. He transitioned smoothly, using his strength to drive forward. They grappled in the center of the arena, a technical exchange of grips and positions. Rebecca felt his power immediately. He was much stronger than Carlos or any human she had trained with. But strength had limits. She used angles, created frames with her arms to maintain distance, and waited for an opening. It came when Curran tried to pass her guard. He committed 3 of his arms to controlling her legs. Rebecca grabbed the 4th arm, trapped it against her chest, and bridged hard. Curran went over, suddenly on his back with Rebecca in mount position. The crowd roared, but Curran was not done. He had studied human ground fighting. He knew how to create frames, how to prevent submissions. They rolled across the mat, each fighter seeking dominant position. For 2 full minutes they battled technically, neither gaining decisive advantage. Rebecca respected his improvement. Curran respected her skill. It was no longer predator versus prey. It was warrior versus warrior. Finally, Rebecca created an opening. She transitioned to Curran's back, got her hooks in, and worked for the choke. Curran defended intelligently, tucking his chin, grabbing her arm. But Rebecca adjusted, found the angle, and applied pressure. Curran tapped, not because he was weak, but because he recognized when he was beaten. Rebecca helped him up. They clasped hands in mutual respect. The crowd gave them both a standing ovation. This had been a real fight between skilled opponents. "You have improved greatly," Rebecca said. "You are still better," Kieran acknowledged, "but I am learning." The matches continued. Some humans won decisively. Some Dravek managed to take victories through raw determination and their newly learned tactics. By the time the individual matches finished, humans led 6-4. Then came the 2 versus 2 matches. Amy and Lisa faced 2 Dravek who had watched every previous fight and learned from them. The Dravek worked as a team, covering each other, preventing the humans from isolating either fighter. It was close and brutal. Lisa took a hard strike to the ribs that cracked bone, but she kept fighting, kept moving, kept supporting Amy. In the end, technique prevailed. Amy locked in a submission on one Dravek while Lisa controlled the other, but both humans were bleeding and exhausted when it finished. The Dravek won the next 2 versus 2 match. Their fighters trapped David and another human named Patrick against the arena wall and used superior reach to land strikes from safety. Patrick got knocked out by a 4-armed combination that he simply could not defend against. 7-5, humans leading but the Dravek showing they could adapt and win. The 5 versus 5 matches were different. This was where human teamwork truly shined. Carlos, Victor, Anna, Rebecca, and Amy moved like they shared one brain. They communicated with glances and subtle gestures, creating formations that protected injured teammates and isolated Dravek fighters. The Dravek had strength and natural weapons. The humans had 5,000 years of military tactics bred into their bones. They fought like a Roman legion, each person covering the others, creating angles and opportunities. It was beautiful and brutal. The Dravek scored victories through pure power, taking humans out of the fight with devastating strikes. But every time a human fell, the others adjusted their formation, compensated, and kept fighting. When the dust settled, the humans had won the 5 versus 5 by the narrowest margin. 3 humans still standing versus 1 Dravek, but it had cost them dearly. Half the human team needed medical attention. The score stood at 8-6 with only 1 match remaining. The finale, all 10 versus all 10. Both teams had 20 minutes to recover and strategize. Rebecca gathered her fighters in the preparation room. Blood, bruises, and exhaustion marked everyone, but their eyes still held determination. "They have adapted faster than we expected," Carlos said, wincing as Amy wrapped his ribs. "They are learning human tactics and combining them with their natural advantages." "Which means we need to evolve again," Rebecca said. "We cannot fight them the way we fought the first matches. They know our patterns now." Victor studied the Dravek team through a monitor. "They are tired too. Stronger, yes, but we have better endurance. In a long fight, we have the advantage." "Then we make it a long fight," Rebecca decided. "We do not try for quick submissions. We wear them down, force them to chase us, defend against us, work continuously. Human endurance versus Dravek power. Let's see who breaks first." On the Dravek side, Varshak himself came down to address the team. His presence filled the room with authority. "You have fought with honor," he told them. "You have learned and adapted, but this final match decides everything. Our reputation, our place in the galaxy, everything we have built for 3,000 years rests on your shoulders." Draxel, despite his earlier defeat, stood tall. "We will not fail, Supreme Leader." "I know you will not, because you are Dravek, because we are warriors. Show these humans that adaptation has limits. Show them that sometimes strength is enough." The teams entered the arena for the final match. 20 warriors, 10 from each species. The crowd had grown silent with anticipation. This was history. This was legend being written in real time. The arena had been expanded to give room for tactical movement. Both teams spread out, creating space between fighters. Rebecca looked across at Varshak's warriors. Kieran, Draxel, Kresh, Sark, Torn, and 5 others, all elite, all tested, all determined. The human team stood ready, tired, injured, but unbroken. The referee raised all 6 of his legs. This is the final trial. Victory by complete defeat of the opposing team. Fight with honor. The chime rang. Both teams moved. The Dravak charged as a unified wall of black scales and razor claws. 10 warriors moving with coordinated purpose, learned from watching human tactics. They expected the humans to scatter, to use mobility against strength. But Rebecca had predicted this. Formation Delta, she called out. The humans moved into a tight defensive circle, backs to each other, creating a human shield wall. When the Dravak wave hit, they met coordinated resistance instead of isolated targets. Carlos and Victor anchored the formation, absorbing the initial impact. Anna and Amy worked the flanks, redirecting attackers into each other. The crowd watched in awe as 10 humans held against 10 Dravak through pure tactical discipline. It was not elegant. Blood flew, bones cracked, but the formation held. "Rotate," Rebecca ordered. The humans shifted positions, putting fresh fighters on the front line. David and Lisa took point while Carlos and Victor caught their breath behind them. It was a tactic as old as human warfare: rotation, relief, endurance. The Dravak recognized what was happening. They were being forced to fight continuously while the humans cycled their people. Draxel called to his team and they changed tactics. Instead of pressing the attack, they backed off and tried to create separation. Smart, but Rebecca had expected that too. Break and pursue, pattern 7. The human formation exploded outward. Now they became the hunters, not allowing the Dravak to rest or regroup. Carlos and Victor went after the strongest Dravak fighters. Anna and Amy targeted the ones showing fatigue. The team worked like wolves, coordinating without words. Kieran found himself fighting Rebecca again. This time exhaustion made them both slower, sloppier, but the fundamentals remained. Rebecca used technique. Kieran used strength. They grappled hard, neither gaining clean advantage. Around them the battle raged. Patrick took down a Dravak with a beautiful throw but got hit by another from the side. He stayed down, out of the fight. The Dravak pressed the advantage, taking out Lisa with a brutal combination. 8 humans versus 9 Dravak. The odds were shifting. Victor saw the danger and made a decision. He charged into the middle of 3 Dravak fighters, accepting damage to create openings for his teammates. Carlos and Anna capitalized, taking down 2 Dravak while Victor absorbed punishment. When Victor finally went down, nose broken and ribs cracked, he had bought his team critical time. 7 humans versus 7 Dravak. The fight became chaos, individual battles within the larger war. David choked out Sark. Kresh knocked out Amy with a vicious strike. Carlos and Draxel exchanged technique versus power in a grinding match that left both bloodied. Rebecca finished her fight with Kieran taking his back and forcing the tap. She looked up to assess the battlefield. 4 humans standing, 4 Dravak. Everyone was damaged. Everyone was exhausted. This would come down to who wanted it more. "Rally on me," she called to her remaining teammates. Carlos, Anna, and David moved to her position. They were all limping, bleeding, fighting through pain, but they were still fighting. The 4 remaining Dravak formed their own group: Draxel, Torn, and 2 others. They understood now what made humans dangerous. It was not strength or speed. It was refusal to quit. Humans from Earth, where giving up meant death. The 2 groups faced each other across the arena. The crowd had gone completely silent. This was more than a fight. This was 2 philosophies of warfare in direct conflict. Overwhelming force versus relentless adaptation. "One more push," Rebecca said to her team. "Everything we have, everything we are." They charged together. The Dravak met them head-on. What followed was less combat than mutual destruction. Anna took out Torn using a leg lock that hyperextended his knee, but Torn managed to crack her collarbone before going down. David and one of the Dravek knocked each other out simultaneously. Carlos faced Draxel in what had to be their third fight of the day. Both warriors were beyond exhausted, running on pure determination. They traded strikes, grapples, and grinding pressure. Finally, Carlos got Draxel's back one more time and finished the choke. Draxel tapped and they both collapsed. That left Rebecca and one final Dravek named Vex. They circled each other slowly. Rebecca's left arm was injured. Vex was limping from a damaged knee, but neither would surrender. They came together in a final exchange. Rebecca used every technique she knew. Vex fought with desperate strength. They grappled, struck, wrestled, and bled together for what felt like hours but was really only minutes. In the end, Rebecca caught Vex in a triangle choke from her back. Vex tried to power out, tried to lift her, tried everything. But Rebecca had locked it in perfectly and she was not letting go. Vex tapped. The arena exploded in noise. Rebecca released the hold and both fighters lay on the ground, unable to move. Medical teams rushed out to help both sides. Varshak walked into the arena. The supreme leader of the Dravek looked at the carnage. His warriors, the finest in the galaxy, defeated by humans who should have been easy prey. He approached Rebecca as medics helped her sit up. "You fought with honor," he said simply. "You fought with intelligence. You fought as we never learned to fight." Rebecca looked up at him through swollen eyes. "You fought well too. Your warriors adapted faster than we expected." Varshak extended one of his massive hands. Rebecca took it and he pulled her to her feet. The gesture was broadcast to billions of watching beings across the galaxy. "The Dravek acknowledge humans as equals," Varshak announced. "We acknowledge that strength comes in many forms, and we acknowledge that we have much to learn." The crowd roared approval. Species that had lived in fear of the Dravek saw hope. Species that had submitted saw possibility. The galaxy had just changed. Later in the medical facility, the human team recovered together. Broken bones, torn ligaments, concussions, and exhaustion. But they had won. More importantly, they had shown the galaxy what humans were. Ambassador Richard visited them, smiling despite the carnage. "Earth is very proud of you. The Galactic Assembly has formally invited us to join as full members." "That is good," Rebecca said through a split lip. "But right now I just want sleep." 2 months later, Rebecca found herself on Drakner teaching combat techniques to Dravek warriors. Kurin was her most enthusiastic student. The Dravek were learning that their 3,000 years of dominance had made them complacent. Humans offered them something precious: challenge, growth, evolution. Carlos opened a training academy on Sanctuary Prime, teaching aliens from dozens of species how to defend themselves against stronger opponents. The demand was overwhelming. Victor, Anna, David, Amy, and the others became ambassadors of human martial arts, spreading Earth's fighting wisdom across the galaxy. Varshak and Richard Foster formed an unlikely alliance. Dravek's strength combined with human adaptability created partnerships that benefited both species. In the end, the galaxy had not found humans to be their conquerors. They found humans to be their teachers, and humanity had found their place among the stars, not as victims, not as overlords, but as equals who refused to back down and always found a way to win.